Imagine a world where night is not optional. No glowing screens, no streetlights, no switch on the wall to banish the dark. 500 years ago, when the sun went down, the world didn't just get darker, it became different. Shadows stretched longer, sounds traveled farther, time itself seemed to slow down. And when darkness arrived, humanity adapted in ways we've almost completely forgotten. By the early 16th century, electricity wasn't even a concept. Light came from fire-fragile, smoky, expensive fire. When the sun set, most of the world retreated indoors, not from boredom, but from necessity. Cities were dim and dangerous after dusk. Rural villages disappeared into blackness entirely. There were no illuminated signs, no headlights, no glowing windows stretching into the night. For most people, the moon and stars were the brightest lights they would ever know. Night dictated behavior. It decided when you worked, when you slept, when you prayed, and when you feared. The most common light source was the candle, usually made from tallow, which is rendered animal fat. Tallow candles smoked, smelled terrible, and gave off a weak light. Cleaner beeswax candles were a luxury, often reserved for churches or the extremely wealthy. Poorer households used something called rushlights, dried plant stems dipped in leftover animal fat. They burned quickly and dimly. An entire evening might be illuminated by a single flickering flame, barely brighter than a modern nightlight. Light was precious. It was rationed. Because of this, people didn't sleep the way we do now. Historical records describe a fascinating pattern called segmented sleep. After sunset, families would go to bed for a few hours. This was their first sleep. Then, around midnight, they would wake up for an hour or two. This wasn't insomnia. It was completely normal. During this watching hour, people prayed, talked, visited neighbors, or even worked quietly by the firelight. Some court records even show crimes and confessions happening during this time. Then, they'd go back to bed for their second sleep until dawn. Their sleep followed nature, not a rigid schedule. Homes were dark even during the day, with small windows and thick walls. At night, the interiors glowed orange with firelight, casting moving shadows that danced across the walls. Stories were told aloud, songs were sung. Silence was rare inside, but overwhelming outside. Children slept close to their parents. Privacy was almost non-existent. Darkness encouraged togetherness. In cities, night was genuinely feared. Most streets had no lighting. Criminals thrived in the shadows. City gates were closed at dusk, and curfews were strictly enforced. Some towns employed night watchmen who carried lanterns, staffs, and bells. They would walk the streets, calling out the hours and, most importantly, watching for fire. Fire was the greatest threat. A single overturned candle could burn down an entire neighborhood in a matter of hours. Without artificial light, the sky dominated nightlife. The Milky Way was so brilliant, it could cast faint shadows on the ground. Farmers planted their crops by lunar cycles. Travelers timed their journeys to coincide with the full moon. Stars were navigational tools, calendars, and powerful religious symbols. The night sky wasn't just a backdrop, it was a constant, living presence. Time itself was marked differently. Church bells tolled the hours, as clocks were a rarity. Evening prayers framed the night as spiritually dangerous. Darkness was associated with temptation, demons, and the unknown. The candles burning in churches weren't just for light. They symbolized divine protection against the dark. Night also exposed inequality. The wealthy could afford more candles, larger fireplaces, and servants to tend them. The poor went to bed earlier, rose earlier, and lived their lives much closer to natural rhythms. The arrival of gaslight, and later electricity, didn't just illuminate our streets. It rewired humanity. Segmented sleep disappeared. Nights became productive. Cities expanded, both upwards and outwards. And as our cities grew brighter, the sky slowly faded from view. Today, Many of us struggle with sleep, anxiety, and overstimulation problems that were almost unknown in that firelit world. Understanding pre-electric nights reveals something profound. Darkness once shaped our sense of balance. 500 years ago, night wasn't something to conquer. It was something to live within. People feared it, respected it, and adapted to it. Darkness brought rest, reflection, and a natural rhythm to life. Today, we banish the dark with a flip of a switch. But in doing so, we may have lost something ancient and deeply human. Perhaps the past still whispers a lesson to us, that not all darkness needs to be defeated. In a world without artificial light, darkness sharpened the other senses. Sight was weakened, but hearing, smell, and intuition grew much stronger. People could recognize footsteps by their rhythm alone. They could identify neighbors by their coughs, their accents, or the creak of their leather shoes. The sound of wind rustling through trees carried meaning. A change in weather, a sign of danger, or a feeling of calm. Smells also mattered a great deal more. Without modern sanitation, the night air revealed things daylight ignored. The scent of smoke from a distant fire, the presence of nearby animals, or even the smell of illness or decay. Darkness forced a constant state of awareness. Today, light dominates our perception. But back then, the night trained the body to listen. After sunset, humans were no longer the loudest or most confident presence. Dogs barked constantly, not as pets, but as alarms. Horses grew restless in their stalls. Rats, wolves, foxes, and owls became active. In rural areas, wolf howls could be heard so close to villages that people barricaded their doors every single night. Livestock was brought indoors whenever possible, and chickens were locked away securely. Losing an animal to a predator at night could mean losing your means of survival. The night belonged to the creatures who could see in it. Darkness also blurred identity. Without light, witnesses were unreliable. Crimes committed at night were harder to investigate and easier to deny. Many laws specifically addressed nighttime behavior. Carrying weapons after dark was often illegal. Moving about without a lantern could lead to your arrest. And lighting fires after a certain hour was strictly forbidden. Punishments were often harsher for crimes committed at night because the darkness itself was seen as a sign of criminal intent. The fear wasn't just imagined. It was structured into the law. Segmented sleep also created a unique space for dreaming and for remembering those dreams. People spoke about their dreams openly. They were discussed at breakfast, interpreted by priests, and taken seriously as warnings or messages from the divine. Some medical texts even advised people to rise slowly after their second sleep so their dreams could settle. Night wasn't just an external darkness. It was a journey into an internal one. Our modern, compressed sleep often silences our dreams. Pre-electric nights gave them room to breathe. And without screens, it was stories that filled the dark. Legends of spirits, fair folk, demons, and wandering souls weren't just entertainment. They were a way to explain the unknown. Firelight distorts faces. Shadows move independently. The mind fills in the gaps. Children learned fear from a young age, but they also learned respect. You didn't wander off at night. You didn't mock the dark. You didn't whistle after midnight. These stories were folklore, but they also served a very practical purpose. They kept people alive. Perhaps the most alien aspect of this world to us today was the silence. No engines, no hum of electricity, no distant traffic. When the fires dimmed and the voices stopped, the silence would press inward. People described it as heavy, as if it were alive. It was something you could feel. And in that profound silence, your own thoughts grew louder. Electric light gave humanity control, but it also brought constant stimulation. We gained productivity, safety, and speed, but we lost enforced rest. We lost the stars. We lost the sacred boundary between day and night. 500 years ago, darkness demanded humility. It reminded people that they were small, temporary, and connected to cycles far beyond their control. Today, we often fear darkness because we've forgotten how to live with it. Yet our bodies still remember. The struggle to sleep, the craving for quiet, the sense of calm that arrives when the lights finally dim and the world slows down. Perhaps the night isn't broken. Perhaps we are. And perhaps that ancient darkness is still waiting, not to harm us, but to restore a rhythm we once knew.